Greetings, fellow warriors of Dojima, and welcome back to Unrepentant Geeking, the show where a geek can be a geek. As always, I am your host, Shaun, and yeah, it's been a while, hasn't it? Let's just say a lot of things happened, and then a lot more things happened, and I really don't want to go into too much detail. It's already out there online. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I'll just say, yes, I changed the channel. I won't say I don't have any regrets. I regret the way things had to end, but I don't regret ending them. Things needed to end. Things needed to change. And I'm going to keep moving forward, and I hope all of you will do so as well. I hope you'll stick with me as we continue to move into a new era. And that's all I have to say about that, more or less. Maybe if there's interest, I might go into more detail somewhere down the line, but I've already said quite a bit on my Twitter feed if you want. And, basically, yeah, life goes on. Life goes on. I am here today to review the latest release in the long-running Yakuza series. And if you are a longtime follower, you will know I am a big fan of the Yakuza games. The series first debuted in Japan back in 2005 and then released in North America September 5th, 2006. Originally as a PlayStation 2 game. The series has since produced 6 mainline games, 7 if you count Yakuza 0, which I do. So 7 mainline games, plus a number of spin-offs, and a new game that's going to be coming down the line, a number of remakes. This is, in Japan, a pretty popular series. Outside of Japan, not as much, although in recent years that's been changing. For those of you not familiar, Yakuza is a series of video games following primarily, and because there are a lot of characters, there are a lot of characters in this game. There's even a number of playable characters over the years, but primarily the main character of the Yakuza series to date has been Kazuma Kairu. He's a Yakuza who, over the course of the first game, eventually leaves his clan and gets caught up in bigger things. He largely tries to spend his life now running an orphanage with various children he's helped rescue, including one young girl in particular who is the daughter of an old love of his who he becomes her adopted father. And over the course of the series, we watch her grow up as Kazuma slowly gets sucked back into the world of the Yakuza and to violence time and time again. These games are based very much off of a popular subgenre of films in Japan, which are very much, they're kind of the equivalent to mob movies over here, but not really. I guess they're the closest equivalent, but they have their own tone. They're very melodramatic, they're very over the top, they're all about honor, about even bad guys having codes and things like that. They're very, very divorced from reality, but they're also highly entertaining. Melodrama gets a bit of a bad rap these days, and I think that's unfair. Done right, melodrama can be a lot of fun, and the Yakuza series has generally done melodrama right. They're crazy, they're over the top, and the series is known for its big, grand, epic main plots and its insane, crazy side stories. We'll get back to that. The primary game itself, generally the series, is a more or less open world game. Now, it came into existence when open world games were still not quite what they are today, and certainly not nearly as ubiquitous. And in the original days, it was much more, the difference between, what was called adventure, event, and battle was much more distinct. In the same way that people like to compare the film genre that this game is based off to mob movies, people like to compare Yakuza itself to Grand Theft Auto. They say it's Japan's Grand Theft Auto. That's really not accurate at all. And if you go into a Yakuza game expecting a Japanese Grand Theft Auto, you are going to be disappointed. These games are very different from Grand Theft Auto. Yes, they're open world, and yes, they're more or less involved with criminal elements and things like that, but beyond that, no. First of all, Yakuza's combat is pretty much a modern interpretation of the classic old-school brawler. Combat in these games is always Kazuma or whoever you're playing as going up against usually larger gangs, disposable minions, and then fighting a boss or two along the way. He can, at times, depending on the game, pick up weapons, but generally those are more of a side aspect. At its heart, Yakuza is one part exploration and going around an open world, and one part brawler. And it's a really great formula, and I'm like I said, I'm a big fan. I've played every single Yakuza game that has been released in the West. Even the well-intentioned but misguided zombie spinoff. Yes, really, less said about that, probably the better. Played them all. I've loved them all. I don't think there's been, aside from maybe the zombie spinoff, an actual bad game in the series. And these days, what they're known for is, as I said, brawler, exploration, and the mini-games and side stuff. This is a series over the last few games, you can go to arcades. Like in Yakuza 6, you can play actual full versions of Virtual Fighter 5, Final Showdown, Puyo Puyo, Outrun, Super Hang-On, Space Harrier, and Fantasy Zone. And these full games are in there. And there's even the ability to play Virtual Fighter 5 and Puyo Puyo as a two-player mode separate from the main game, just from the main menu. And the mini-games go way beyond that as well. There's full-on mahjong in here, like a deep, full, computerized mahjong. You can go to a batting cage. There's also a baseball mini-game where you actually coach a team. There's so much ridiculous stuff. There's darts. There's online chatting as a mini-game. There's going to hostess bars as a mini-game. There's a lot of ridiculous stuff you can do in Yakuza 6. Now, when I say open world, Yakuza takes a somewhat different approach where you don't get this massive, super gigantic, sprawling world. This is not Far Cry 5. This is not what people think of. Again, the main location of the series is almost always Kamuchiro. It's a fictionalized location in Tokyo. Almost every game includes at least some time spent here. And Yakuza 6 adds a new location, Hiroshima, which I absolutely love and we'll get back to. Yakuza 6 picks up about 3 years after Yakuza 5. Kiryu gone to jail so that he could try and basically start anew because his adopted daughter became an idol and then threw it all away largely because she didn't want to abandon him as a father figure. And he gets out of jail, tries to find the daughter only to discover that she's in the hospital. She was nearly run over by a car, she's in a coma, and she was carrying a baby who is her son. And so, the majority of the game, the primary plot of Yakuza 6, involves Kazuma Kiryu going out into the world and trying to discover who's the father of this baby, why did this happen, was this actually an accident, was this somebody from his past or something else going on, and over the course of the game he gets slowly sucked into larger machinations of the Yakuza, as often happens. So that's the basic setup, and for those who don't know, Yakuza 6 also marks, at least for now, the end of the story for Kazuma Kiryu. This is, at least for now, intended to be the last game starring him. This is not to say the series is going to end. Indeed, they've already announced the next title in the series, in the works, and it's going to star a new character. And you have to understand, by the way, Yakuza 6 originally came out in Japan back in 2016, okay? Which is typical. These games have a lot of text in them. There's a lot to translate. And I should also go ahead and say that, yes, there is only Japanese voice audio in this game, which is probably for the best. I don't think Sega has the resources or the desire to do a quality English dub. If they did, I'd gladly support that. But in light of that, I'd rather just stick with the Japanese voices than get some sort of bad dub and have that be the only option. So yes, this is the end of Kiryu's story. And so there's a lot riding on this game. And I can say that overall, I really appreciate it. And I believe Yakuza 6 is probably my favorite entry in the series to date. So I'm going to compare it most directly to the most recent release, which, well, technically was the remake, but I'm going to compare it to Zero. So Zero was a more over-the-top overall. It included multiple playable characters and a more complicated battle and leveling system. By contrast, 6 has only one playable character and a far more simplified leveling system and streamlined combat. But I also think that means that gameplay in 6 is more focused and cuts out a lot of the chaff that at times I felt weighed down 0 and 5 and a number of previous releases. Now, I will say that 0 has more numerous and probably better mini-games, but while those are fun, they've never been the main draw of the series for me. I love these games for A, the often endlessly compelling brawling, and B, the story, be it the more zany side stuff or the melodrama-soaked main affairs. And speaking of story, the main story of 6 gets to the point without all the meandering of 0. There's none of the weird flourishes that 0 had, where 0 would give us a mixture of cutscenes and then semi-CGI cutscenes and then just still images with text, but with actual audio. I don't know what was going on with the cutscenes in 0, but it was weird, it was off-putting, and it also front-loaded the game with a whole lot of story. It took forever for Zero to actually get to the point. And I know that turned off people. In a lot of ways, Zero was not a good jumping on point. It's really more of a hardcore game for the hardcore Yakuza fans. If I was going to recommend a starting point, the remake that was released very recently, Yakuza Kiwami. It came out in the West in August of last year, August 2017. It's a quality remake. It makes some interesting additions, and overall, it's a good starting point. 6 obviously isn't quite as good of a starting point because it's, in a lot of ways, the culmination of the entire series, story-wise, especially in terms of the main character. But I do think it can more or less work, and I think that 6 gets the point without all the meandering of 0. Now, there are still plenty of insane side stories in 6 that include elements like time travel, body swapping, and self-aware assistant apps trying to take over the world. And those are just a few examples. So things still get plenty crazy in 6. But I think the main story has a much stronger emotional core, especially compared to 0. And I think the same is true for many of the more down-to-earth side stories as well. Parenthood, who we choose as family, aging, and what we pass along to the next generation are themes that come up time and time again across 6, in both the main story and in various side stories. And I think the finale in particular has some real bite. Combine that with a brand new engine, because this is the first Yakuza game built from the ground up on PS4. Now, like I said, technically the remake came out first here in the West, but it was made after. It's using the same engine, but Yakuza 6 was the first actual PS4 one to be made and released. And it really shows. While not exactly pushing the PS4 hardware to its limits, Yakuza 6 is definitely a graphical step up for the series in general. And I would say for the most part, there's a good sense of parity between it and other higher end, or at least medium end, full releases for the system in general. And as always, the series has terrific audio with really great voice acting from the Japanese cast and strong music overall. Nothing super memorable by itself, but it enhances and supports the action well. Regarding the new minigame that Sega's been pushing pretty hard in regards to the marketing for Yakuza 6, the clan battles, which is basically a pseudo-real-time strategy sort of affair where you send off various troops that you can recruit from around the world into battle against these series of gangs. It's fine. It's okay. It's not bad, but it's not really compelling or particularly memorable on its own. By itself, it's nothing special. It has its moments, and the story that goes along with it does do a nice job of paralleling the larger themes of Yakuza 6 in general, and that was mainly why I stuck with it. On its own, it's nothing special. And then there's the new area. Something very different. Something we've never quite seen before in Yakuza. It's this kind of small town on the edges of Hiroshima. Onomichi Jingu in Hiroshima. It's this fishing village. It's this port town. And it has immediately such a different flavor. It feels more down to earth. It feels slower. There's lots of shrines and places to explore, and a little sub-element where you can find different poems that have been put into little statues that you can read, and then Kazuma will comment on them. And it's definitely a small town, especially compared to the main area. And you do end up spending quite a bit of time here. Here you'll join a baseball team, for example, and you'll have to lead them to victory in this, again, so mini game, and you'll find a lot of different things to do. You'll become a mascot for the town, literally wearing a ridiculous costume in one of my favorite side quests. It just gets more and more nonsensical as it goes along, but in the best possible way. Yakuza games never hold back. They have no shame. They have no, they're completely willing to embrace the ridiculous, and it's one of the reasons I love them. And so I think this new area is extremely effective. It works both just as a fun place to explore and spend time in on its own, and as something that ties in heavily to the larger themes of the game. And I don't want to say any more than that, because I really love the main story of Yakuza 6. Yakuza 0, Yakuza 5, even Yakuza 4, they had okay main stories, but they did feel, there were good elements in them, but a lot of times, like, the Yakuza side felt more rote, and they felt like they were just getting so over the top, it was almost to the detriment of what was going on. Like, there's good over the top, and there's bad, and the Yakuza series was starting to lean on the bad side. 6 brings it back together. There's some really heartbreaking stuff at times, and there's plenty of likable new characters, plus adorable baby is adorable. I'm so happy the series is finally getting some traction with a wider audience outside of Japan, and I think Yakuza 6 is only going to keep the series' momentum growing. This is a wonderful game, and I cannot recommend highly enough that you go give it a try. even if you've never played Yakuza series before, I think Yakuza 6 is approachable enough that you can certainly enjoy it. There are text recaps of all the previous games, and the opening about 20 minutes of the game do try and recap what's going on through video and some brief gameplay sequences. And even if you're not familiar with every single character, I think the game does a good enough job establishing the emotional context of what's going on, that even if you don't know all the backstory, you could still follow and understand why this is important and understand what's going on. Ultimately, Kazuma Kiryu is one of my favorite video games characters. If I was ever to do a top 10 list of favorite video game characters, he would absolutely make it. He's such a wonderful, complex individual. He's been so well developed over the years, and he's just such a fun character. This is somebody who is this ultimate tough badass, but like all true badasses, has no need to show it. He'll absolutely beat the shit out of you if you force him to, but he's just as happy to go along with kids and help them find a cat, or get involved in racing model cars, or dressing up as a mascot, or helping two kids figure out how to be in love with each other when their parents don't approve. He's ridiculous, and I love that. And his story here comes to a powerful and effective close. Combine what I said about the story with the best graphics in the series history, and a really compelling overall take on gameplay that refines and gets rid of a lot of the unnecessary elements and just keeps the strongest, and you can see why 6 is probably my favorite entry in the series to date. By all means, please go search out Yakuza 6. You won't be sorry that you did. Won't be sorry that you did. Won't be sorry that... And that's going to do it for this episode of Unrepentant Geeking. As I said at the start, things are definitely changing, but one thing that isn't changing is my commitment to keeping this show going. I got a lot of things going on right now, a lot of pokers in the fire, or however you put it. I'm working on some projects with some other people. There's going to be some new stuff that I'm going to be starting up. I'm going to hopefully be able to announce that by next video, at least some of that. And I intend to keep making videos and keep figuring out how to keep going forward. So, yeah, thanks as always for joining me. And until next time, this is Shaun Cronenfeld for Unrepentant Geeking, and for now at least, only Unrepentant Geeking. Wishing you all long days and pleasant nights. Till next time.